Welcome to Styled for Growth, the podcast where mindset meets style and presence becomes your power. I am your host, Antasia Shabrilla Moore, and each week we'll dive into the tools, truths, and transformation behind showing up as the woman you're meant to be, inside and out. All right, y'all. So let's get into, you know what? Episode 5, Mindset First, the real glow up. All right. Okay. So we're going to really focus on building some inner clarity here. And we're going to kind of sort of figure out what our emotional boundaries are going to manifest so we can become the woman that we're meant to be. So mindset as your foundation. Like, so when you think about your foundation, most girls don't like foundation on their faces. Their makeup routine exudes everything else but foundation. Okay. And so when we get into that idea, I'm a big believer in foundation. I'm a big believer in that over concealer, eyelashes, the false ones, the mink ones, individual ones, the strip sets. I saw maybe 2 pair of lashes my entire lifetime, 35 years plus, that I only liked that I ever dealt with two. Okay, how hard I could just replicate those two, fine and so be it. And that was it. So they're usually very less is more vibe as well, attitude and mindset, just for overall aesthetic. Okay, authentic, glowing vibe, like and I mean I know that word is just so bad. That energy, well, that choice and decision. I like to say choices and decisions. So versus, well, and then you know what? That's so watered down, and I actually feel a way because it's sad that that's really well, and then again, it's the same thing as foundation. Everybody doesn't want to do foundation. Everybody doesn't believe in Christ. Everybody won't go to church. Everybody, and so you have to figure out who's your people. And when you do that, the rest is really clear and easy. Your clarity becomes crystal sharp clear. You don't have no interest in speaking to these people. They are not going to be people that's going to pour into you. They're not going to be. And so it makes it easy to have the distance to that avoidance of what takes place because your energy is constantly drained from individuals who are refusing to think appropriately like you do. And when you get to those moments, that nut and bolt of the issue, of the problem, the stubbornness, the toxicity, the poisonous that's constantly being poured into those problems that these people have created. So of course you want to, when you really got your mindset on your goal to manifest that woman that you're trying to become, inside and out, you don't have any problems. You're not going to find a solid enough reason as to interact with these people. So it makes it easy to choose avoidance instead of interaction. Okay, that's just a logical first step. So again, foundation, Christ, all of those moments really sets the tone. If my face is evenly done up and everything else flows into what I need it to be, whatever is coming at the foundation, as long as that face, that first hit looks good, I don't really mind anything else. I'm not. And when you really think about the overall evenness and flow, you can't even really think of nothing else. You can't even think about the blushes because you putting your blush on your overall focus of your face, the evenness of your tone. That's the same thing. You apply Christ to that one area. Can you imagine how it just permeates? You won't stop staring. You're like, wow, God is this creative. Wow. I mean, you marvel. You take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds, if not more, to just marvel at one's glory. And that's sad because we lust after the flesh. You know, we're talking about the flesh is weak. or we want to bite the flesh off. I was reading an article of a young man, and he wanted to kind of leave his girlfriend alone in the past. I guess she was mean to him, treated him derogatorily, and he left her, and she took his lip smooth off his face. You know what I mean? So, and that really, truth be told, saddens me. It saddens me to the point where I'm almost like, okay, so we're gonna really choose to be neglectful of the very first step, okay, in your face. People do primer and people do all of these things, but when I want to go and apply makeup, I'm reaching for foundation first. Okay, I'm going in with foundation repeatedly over and over and over and over again. And after I feel build my foundation, okay, I am going to go in with eyeshadow, mascara, a nice concealer. If I want to couture, then fine, I may have a palette for contouring. And I'm probably going to go in with a highlighter. I'll probably do a blush, a lipstick, an eyeliner pencil, and maybe a lip colored pencil. And I'm done. I want to brush out my eyebrows. I used to have an eyelash curler, so I'll probably do that just to give it a little extra oomph. If I want to go in with some eyelashes, they're not going to be the mink fur. Okay, you'll probably catch me in a really light type of choice. Okay, and that's how I set the foundation for overall chic, minimalist, soft glam look. Now, you can skip your foundation, but what are you applying your makeup to without foundation? I mean, just answer that question for a second. So, if we have to really answer what this question is, we're applying our overall aesthetics to prime face that is not getting any foundation. And it's the habit of giving. I've never seen a more selfish culture generation before. It's so sad. I mean, the selfishness just behind how we date out here in our culture. And that's so sad because women are constantly kind of sort of having a father shoot and kill somebody, or young ladies are constantly kind of going to bat for men who ended up dogging them out in the end. Or you either have necessarily fathers and daughters who have very ill relationships. Or I mean, our culture with our social societal problems is just profound. So I am not willing to really bypass a good foundation, and that's whether it's your home, your church base, a good space that can really be built upon, and necessarily get built to the point where your overall look becomes, as Beyonce, Nicki Minaj, Anika and them claim, flawless, because you take the time out to cultivate those images. So you definitely want to take the time out and have a certain mindset as you glow and become who you really want to focus on becoming, because that foundation that sets you into that particular tone, when you get into these certain particular rooms, it's going to resonate with the woman that you're trying to become. So you really want to make sure that you don't really gloss over that a little too quickly. And because when you do those things, you only are doing yourself a disservice. So who in their right mind is really going to take all this time out to do all of these things and then bypass their foundational point? So you have all of these, and I don't know. I guess you know what I mean. So it has to be either my skin is so flawless. Oh, my skin is so, this vain. Vanity is going to destroy you every time. It's just the same as the devil, or who's here to rob, steal, kill, and destroy. So your story isn't what happened, it's what you choose to become. And that's really what it's about, because people always want to say a thousand different things. I mean, people can gossip about you and assume that that's what the story is because that's what happened. That's what you said has happened. And again, you want to realize that just because people are doing these things, you want to question, have things with the open mind. Napoleon Hill is so right. So when you open up your mind to the possibility that this is true or not, then you begin that moment of that kind of ebb and flow. I like to call it a flow, where you can really appreciate people for what and who they are and not just what they choose to present to you because there's a sense of convenience there. So power phrases plus affirmations is definitely where you want to go. So power phrases can be just because you said that's what it is, that doesn't make it what it is. Really simple. Affirmations can be, if I have the courage to be kind, then I can do anything. Okay. And then you can really just learn how to have those moments where you can go. I mean, when I really think about how courageous some of these young ladies are, I mean, you keep a list of ladies who bring you courageous thoughts. My very first one, who I always go to, is Aliyah. To lay down your life at such a young age, there is no more of a courageous spirit than that. And I've said this before, ladies and men who have hated on women, there's not going to make it onto your list because hatred is not the same as courage. And the same that goes with being like retarded. Like, you know how sometimes we can be so stubborn that we just retard our effort? That, what about retarded sounds courageous? You know what I mean? The energy that the choices make gives off a frequency, whether it's a hertz. And yeah, it's gotta be true. The courageous frequency of hertz is way higher than that of retardation. This again is true, even in the way that we choose to articulate it via our tones. And so when I had a friend in high school who always went by Tone, but his name is not Tone. The name is actually, I want to say, Anthony. And so when you spell out Anthony, it's Anthony. And Tone, it might be like Anton, or something of that nature. But it's not always as it appears to be. And sometimes appearances really keeps you caught up in what people say, which doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it is or that is what happened. So that's a perfect example of that. And then you have issues and problems with the way that people choose to come to you. You know what I mean? People can say that, yeah, I have a set date for this time, and then the time appears, and all of a sudden it's evaporated. Well, where did it just go? You just said. So just because it was said, it doesn't necessarily mean that that is what's taking place. That doesn't necessarily mean that that is what's taking place. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is necessarily, so to speak, a statement that is true. So you always want to remember and use your memory because your memory is really powerful. I ran into a young lady whose name was Memory, and this is some kind of God, divine fate, that's her name, and she always loved to be around me. She loved me, and I haven't seen her in a long time. But again, who's on my mind? Memory or no, or somebody, some other celebrity, Beyonce? No, Memory. You see what I mean? So you just want to be mindful because you really can sometimes entertain angels and never even really know what that's what they were until they're gone. Long gone. Probably not ever to return again. And based off those brief interactions, you're gonna revel in that type of marveling idea, or either you're gonna shrink back because you chose what you did. And ultimately the choice is yours. So that's why you really want to have affirmations in place that really help you kind of sort of make the latter choice and not the one that is in the majority. So you really want to focus on that because sometimes people can really tell stories, and that's sad that stories are so creative, but sometimes we can tell stories on one another, and that means they're lies. We're telling lies about what actually took place to save our own highs. So that's what I say, it's a very selfish generation. Our culture could be so self-centered that we do these things to the expense of others. Why is that appropriate? It's not. And that's why most of the time they'll say that humanity does not favor those individuals that are greedy and liars. They more so gravitate towards those who are benevolent. That means they're giving, they're altruistic, they consider their people, not just constantly self. Because again, hence self-centeredness, selfishness. Altruistic thoughts has to lead with the A and not an S. Selfish is an SE, and it kind of reminds us of being seen, how we often hate the sight of success. It's a power there. So sight is one of the five senses. And so you have altruistic, and then you also have like philanthropic. Like that's the people who are really geared to kind of sort of helping the big type of charities and things of that nature. And then you have people who are benevolent, and that's a B word. It's kind of like beneficent, to the extent that they're useful because they always are given. You may constantly find yourself down on your luck to the point where you're just like, well, eventually you change and you get your act where you wanted to be at. Therefore, you become the woman that you've been trying to manifest. And that's ultimately where you want to see yourself at, whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 35 years from now, however long it takes, that's how long it takes. And so patience is always a really great virtue to have. And affirming, my style takes patience. I have to have patience in order to manifest the style that I admire. And it's really just as simple as that. And you can do those things as long as you take the time out to allow yourself to do so. I like to say an allowance is kind of sort of like the same thing. If you allow yourself to do the chores and you receive an allowance in exchange for your kind of sort of efforts and things of that nature, that's a positive. If you allow yourself to experience happiness, then that's a positive. You make the choice and conscious decision to do so, just the same as having chores and receiving that idea in the end that we get to have a certain kind of monetary reward based off it. So one of it is very physical, one of it is very mindset-y. And in the end of the day, they're probably tomato. So you always just want to really be able to lean back on that type of comfort and really understand that that's really what it's all about. And how can you help other people achieve the same? And it's really just frankly no more than that. I don't know why people have, like I said, it's just so self-centered, gotten so into just being about self. My butt needs to get bigger and my boobs need to get bigger so I can have more money in my pocket. But at the same time, when you do those things, you're taking from something else. And sometimes I guess that's why the kind of sort of sustainability, people feel like we're kind of sort of getting to that sense where we're taking so much from other people that you're depleting things inside of the world and our earth and our planet. And it's kind of becoming that sustainability has become some of the issues that some of the activists have really been trying their hardest to fight. And now we understand and see, like, it's not about becoming your best woman with or without fillers. It's about becoming your best woman because the fillers have made me so. And that's not what a god-given presence is. It's not a filler. A filler is something that's outside of you. So until you learn how to have your foundation put in place, you're always going to turn to a filler. And until you understand that your filler comes from God and Christ and your mindset and your thoughts, and then having that okayness and courage to accept those issues, and then you're never really going to change, and you're necessarily going to continuously rely on fillers and not God. And that again is ultimately an example that you are going to necessarily regret setting, as long as you continuously to stubbornly cling to that type of idea. Because the cleanliness is not necessarily independence. Independence is, which is sad because Juneteenth and July 4th have become some things that has gotten to do with Biden. And Biden has a moment where you get to get your entire son off scot-free, Hunter, and you have your whole entire bank account that's fat as ever from this war. And I found that extremely sad. And that's what takes place in our, stay out the window. That what takes place in our reality, though. Like the white man gets to constantly have a little, oh, hey, have a good day. And black women and males are what, the number one incarcerated in the world. So no, I didn't choose to vote for that type of idea. I just really, 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 really felt sad about that whole presidency type of cabinet. And I knew it in my heart of hearts myself on my own that I felt extremely saddened, and I just did not want to go with the masses and the crowds. And I've been rewarded with having a platform which has actually grown. So I'm hoping that we can get to 200 something plus subscribers rather soon. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the process. So I thank you all so much. I hope you have enjoyed coming here. So I want you all to save this episode and revisit when you need a reset, or DM me your biggest mindset shift. You can find me on Instagram at Antasia Shabria. And I look forward to seeing you all again sometime soon. Have a good day.